Well, Mark, welcome to the podcast. How's your day going?
It's going great, man. I start every day during the week with going to jujitsu practice, which I started about 6 years ago, and it is my meditation, my grounding, my centering. It's wonderful. So I'm
Oh,
I'm feeling
cool.
good right now. How are you?
I'm good. It's kind of sunny here, a little windy, but that's Iowa for you. So
Yeah, we're getting some nice weather here in New York. Finally, I'm in Brooklyn, and we got some nice sunshine. I'm planting flowers in the garden now. It's great.
yeah, cool. Love that. Love to ask my guests this question, Mark. And what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I love the question and the answer. I got to take you back about 30 years. I was in high school and I was having kind of a tough time for various reasons, and I had this great mentor, this my college advisor, Miss Melvoin, and I would sit in her office. I would go to her office every day, in my free periods, and I'd sit with her. She was kind of a therapist, honestly, at the time. I didn't realize that, but she gave me a lot of time, and some things happen, and she told me. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I dated her daughter, and
Okay.
I broke up, and there's a choice, right? And she told me up front, she said, "Look, you can do this, but if it doesn't go well, like, we're gonna have to take some space." And we ended up breaking up. I broke up with her, and she told me, "Okay, like, I need a minute. This is my family's hurting right now, and that was hard." Um, because this was a lifeline for me, this lady, and she left me a note one day and said, "I think I'm ready to have a conversation." And when I went back to her, she handed me this sticky note, which I kept for the next 13 years until 13 something years until I got married. And it said, "Here's 5 truths about life." And I've held these close to me ever since. Truth number one is that you treat others as you wish to be treated. Truth number two is that life without being vulnerable is safe, but empty. Number three, you cannot always take what you want. Number four is that the truth will always get known. And number five, those who love you will stand by you.
Wow,
These are beautiful truths for me. Yeah, best advice I ever got.
that's amazing. And the fact that she could take a step back and still come back and pour into your life is also a testament to who she was.
Talk about a lesson in leadership in a way. She knew who she was in my life, and she stood by that. I've talked to her recently. We had a nice conversation actually within the last year, and got to catch up, and she's and talk about our lives and everything. But she really held that love as paramount. And that was a lesson to me in and of itself, that someone could be that strong. Because, I've been through stuff too, and you don't always want to forgive people, and you don't always want to invite
Right.
someone back in your life after they hurt someone in your family. I've also talked to the ex-girlfriend. We've also become, not close friends, but we've had conversations since then. And time can do that. But this lesson that she taught me about love and standing by that was really powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm just blown away by the people in our lives, especially those people who've had that kind of impact. That they know that they do that, and they still put the time into people to kind of pour into someone else's life that is so meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just impressed that you were in high school just 30 years ago. I had to go a lot farther back.
I was graduating 30 years ago. So yeah, I'm 47 now. I'm turning 48 this year. And I guess I'll be hitting my one of my reunions next year, so my 30th or something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm always curious, people like yourself, Mark, think about other people in your life who have been role models and mentors. Tell us a little bit about what they meant to you and how they helped you along your journey.
Yeah, that's another one. I think a lot about this because it's so important, to really put a name and to really actually codify in your head, like, okay, so who are the people, who mattered to me and what was the lesson? So there's a few people. Miss Melvoin was one of them, teaching me about this forgiveness and this love. I had some creative mentors. My fifth grade art teacher, who I just was talking with on email, because she sent me her new book, and I sent her my book that I made, Miss Purdy and Mr. Buckley in high school, and of course, there's all kinds of people in your life, but one of them is actually, believe it or not, my ex-girlfriend Sasha. Her parents in high school were a real rock for me. As I said, things weren't that easy in high school, but I would go to her house and I'd spend almost as much time with them as I would with her. They were therapists. They still are therapists. So they could kind of see stuff was going on, and they really kind of, not officially, kind of worked with me. And looking back, I kind of recognized, what they did. But taking a specific example, I told this story on my newsletter recently, and actually only recently really realized the lesson that was taught to me. I always thought about this moment with Miss Purdy in fifth grade, because something really cool came out of it. But only in the last year did I go, wow, there was a real lesson there about about leadership, about creativity, about love. So we're in art class in fifth grade, right? And she says, okay, we're going to do these cups, these mugs. So you take a piece of clay, and you roll out a rectangle, and you roll it up, make a little, cylinder here. And then you cut out a little circle, and you pinch it on the bottom, and you have a cup, right? Like a really basic, kid cup kind of thing.
Right.
But in my head, I was a little bit of an introvert. I seemed extroverted, but I really just kind of was in my own world a lot of the time. And in my head, I went, I bet if I took this, and if you're watching the video, you can see if I took the top, like, and sort of bent it down and made it like a little smile, put little eyes on top and legs, like I could make kind of a frog, like, and be a cool, different thing. But I didn't say this to anybody, So I have this cylinder. And I take these two round things and I put it on the cylinder. Now you can imagine in your head that this looks like a lewd, like a nude figure, And so we're in fifth grade, and all the kids are going, he's making, a girl and all this stuff, and teasing me. And I was quiet. I didn't know how to defend myself. And I just remember Miss Purdy. I don't remember what she said, but she basically went to these other kids and said, "Shut off, let him work. Let's see what happens." Now, the thing that I realized recently is she also didn't know what I was doing. She also could have looked at it and been like, this kid's making a nude figure, and he's 8 or 9 or whatever it is. But she let me work. She said, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what, and I did. I created this thing, and she was kind enough. She actually went and glazed it herself. She thought it was so cool. My parents still have it. I posted a picture recently. But it was just this lesson, like, here's this woman who's teaching all these little kids, and here's this kid going off the script, and not saying what he's doing. And it does look like it could be like he's making a dirty joke, but she just let me work. She said, let's just find out what happens. Because she had the faith because we had a good relationship. She had the faith, I think, I'm looking back now and talking to her now about it, in our relationship, that whatever did come out of it, we would get through it. If I was doing something, lewd or gross, she would be able to talk to me and say, this isn't really appropriate for your age. But she just let me work, and something beautiful came out of it. And she supported me in that, and she worked me on it. So, coming 30, well, this is now 40 years, later from that time. But I've got 2 kids, and, I work with people as a coach, and it's so easy, especially, when you're dealing with your family or, with a client where you have good advice or, something to say, no. Don't go down that path. That's going to lead you wrong. Let me take it the right way. But just to kind of let people expand and explore and find their own path, it's really challenging, especially, when you've got some skills and expertise and experience. But when I think back to that time, that's what she let me do. And that's where so much beautiful growth comes from. Is people in your life, leaders, mentors, who are willing to give you that space, in a space of non-judgment, in a space of love, honestly, to handle whatever comes out of it. To say, look, you might do this thing, it might not go right, and I'm going to be here no matter what.
I love that. So if you think back to some of those experiences you just mentioned, how have those influences shaped your approach to leadership and coaching?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of it is kind of what I said is it's like I said, it's hard to hold your tongue, when you've got an idea that you want to share. But, in coaching, we talk about 3 kinds of listening. And looking back, that's kind of what I was getting from some of these people. Like my high school art teacher, Mr. Buckley, did, he did a lot of this kind of second and third level listening. And the there's three kinds of listening, right? There's kind of level one listening where, maybe you're just hanging out with a friend and you share a story, I share a story, and we're just sort of going back and forth. And there's like a second level of listening where, they share a story and you're curious, you're asking them about it. You're asking them to go a little bit deeper on, okay, well, what was I like for you? And what do you want to get out of this? And, let's kind of work with that. And then there's this third level, this kind of like global listening. And I use this in coaching all the time, where someone comes and says, I have this client, for example, who came to me and, she's an artist and she's like, I want to work on my art career. Okay, I can do that. I've done that with a lot of people. But this third level of listening is kind of listening beyond the words. It's kind of watching the body language. It's listening to how they're saying it. Are they speeding up? Or are they slowing down? And to really just very gently call that out. Someone comes to you, this happens all the time where you ask someone how they're doing. They're like, I'm fine. And you're like, the way you said that, I'm not, is there something else there? Like, do you want to talk? And in the coaching environment, we have agreements about that. Do you want me to call that out? Some people, they don't, they don't want to be challenged, and we can work with that. But the best clients I have, like this one I was telling you, is the one who says, yeah, you know what, if you see something, call it out. If it's not there, it's not there, but if it is there, there's probably something to explore. And this one client, we've done so much interesting work that is serving the foundation for who she wants to be, that's going to serve her career, that's going to serve her, her business. And I love that. And, and a lot of that, I look back to the people that I mentioned, like my ex-girlfriend's parents, they were paying attention, because I was this, young sort of cocky kid. I was doing well in school. I was in theater, and I was on the wrestling team, and everything looked really good. But they were able to look and go, do you want to talk about what's going on? Like, it seems like maybe there's stuff on it. And it's amazing to me that they could, that they could just see that, but they were listening, they were listening for that. So, if I could do even, half the listening that they did, I feel like I'm going to serve people and make an impact in the world,
I love that. And as a coach, one of the most powerful things coaches can do is ask powerful questions.
Absolutely.
So as you're working with a client, how do you, besides listening, how do you develop those questions that you can move your clients from that point where they're stuck to those breakthrough moments?
How do you listen for those powerful questions?
Yeah, how do you listen in a way that you can formulate, those places where people get stuck to help move them to that next level?
That's a good question. I would love to know what your answer is to that question, honestly. I think I'll say that there's, and this is maybe I'm not supposed to share this, but coaches don't have all the answers. That's not the point. So, shocker. It's not the point, and I work with people, like I've worked with people who are in industries. I've worked with someone who's an advisor to the president. I've worked with a healthcare, exec, and I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. So what it really comes down to for me a lot of the times, and this may sound really simple, but if I'm in a conversation with a client and I don't know exactly where to go, I ask them. And that may sound like I'm, passing the buck, or like, oh, you really should know where to. That's not true at all, because the client, in my opinion, if the client's coming in and they're really like interested in this growth, there is a deep knowing that they have. And that may sound mystical, but it's true. Like if they're coming in, like this client I was telling you about, and they want to work on one thing, and I set the container, we're going to ask some questions. You can take your time. We can slow this down. And they're willing to do that. They will find those answers. So if I ever feel like in my head, I'm, listening and I'm like, I have no idea what to ask next, like it happens, right? It happens all the time. I'll be honest. Right. But what's so beautiful is that in this kind of conversation, I'm not leading the client. They're not leading, me. We are co-creating, we are partnering in this growth, in setting these goals, in finding new goals, and finding more fulfillment and success for them. And when you have a partnership like that, you can be vulnerable and say, well, what do you think? where do you think we need to go with this? Like, you just told me all this stuff. Okay, so what feels the most important to you? Like, I could sit there and say, oh, that sounds really important, but that's me. That's me kind
Right.
of putting my own experience in, right? Like, that would be important to me maybe because of whatever, my history. But I am curious to know what your answer would be to that question. How do you listen for powerful questions in all the work that you do?
What I discovered from being a coach myself is I have to resist the temptation, like you just said, to try to solve the problem for them. So it's really about, let me ask another question to get to the question that maybe we haven't gotten to yet, because it's so easy to, you want to, especially if you see it in front of the client. This is so obvious. Why don't you see this? um, but you can't tell them that. You have to get them to, you have to draw it out of them. So it's really about, okay, I know what you need to do, but I really can't tell you. And
Right.
so,
It's a
yeah,
balance. It's a
yeah,
balance. I have some clients, there's this idea, and you know this too as a coach, like, there are times when it's appropriate, I think, to challenge the client, but from a space of not like, okay, look, I just need to tell you, like, this is what's going on.
right.
But to say, like, okay, and I'll even say, like, can I challenge you here? And they say, okay, yeah. I say, okay, it seems to me like this is the thing you're not talking about. And then ask them, how true is that for you? And they might even say, I've had clients say to me, that's not really it. I go, all right, let's explore from there. What might be true then? If I'm not seeing this right, help me see it. And this is true across the board with clients, when they have the space to explain deeper, explain further, explain more clearly what it is that they're up against, they get clarity. I have clients who I work with clients, and I use it like a messaging app. When I have a one-on-one client, they can write to me or send me a voicemail. I have a couple of clients who really just will leave these very long voice messages for me, and mostly kind of work out what it is they need to work out on their own. But having the space to do that, where they know I'm listening, I will offer the questions that I have or the reflection that I have. Just even knowing that space is there. When you have a good, honestly, like when you have a really good friend who you can just be like, oh man, okay, I just gotta tell you kind of what's going on. You oftentimes kind of work it out for yourself, which is not to say that I'm not doing my job, but but because as providing that safe space, that's a real gift to somebody, I think. And I see you doing it. I listened to your podcast, and you do this with your guests so beautifully. So
No, I appreciate that. It's fun because for me as a coach, I get the most satisfaction for those breakthrough moments where
amen.
your client just all of a sudden the light bulb comes on and you can see that they've gotten it. And you were just there on the journey with them to help them get what was already there. It's like you're not putting something new there. You're just helping them discover what was already there.
Absolutely. That breakthrough moment. I mean, that's why I do this. And I got really clear on that a few years ago. Cause I mean, if you read the notes, I know you're going to post kind of my history, but I've done a lot of different things. I was a computer scientist, and then I went back to art school, and I did, sort of tech and art. And then I went into illustration and then fine art, and I've working with people and mentoring people all along the way. And, when COVID hit, I had this real opportunity to create these artist residencies upstate. And when I left that job, without getting into the gory details, it was the hardest experience of my life. I created this dream project for myself, and it fell apart. And there were definitely things that I learned a lot from that experience. But I was in this place where I'd sunk so much into that I had this big blank canvas now. And this was 2021 probably. And I remember, and my wife I will always call her the hero in this story, but I went back and was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to go back and make art. And she said, look, you do what you need to do to feel better. I was really depressed. She said, do what you do to feel better, but you don't have to go back to art. And I said, well, like, what else am I going to do like that? Right. Like, I don't have this. So
Right.
I guess I'll go do that. She said, I just don't, this was crazy to me at the time. She said, I don't think you were that happy. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is my whole identity. Of course I'm happy. But I really, I trust her. And she said, look, do what you need to do, but I think you could take some time right now. We're okay financially. Like, take some time, like really take some time and explore. And I did this coaching exercise that I've posted called that I call the Joy Compass now. And I won't go through the whole thing, but I basically got clear on, in all those different parts of my life, where were the moments where I felt the most joy, where I felt like I was really making a difference, because that's what I want to do. And it was, it was in the art classes I was teaching, and the coaching that I had done, the mentorship I had done. It was that, what you just said. It was like when I have a conversation with someone and maybe I get an email months later and they say, that conversation was really pivotal for me. The way you listened and the way you reflected to me, I got to actually kind of ease into who I want to be. And I've started being it. And now, my career is, whatever it is that they've gotten from it. But that breakthrough moment, that was it. So basically in 2021, I said, okay, how can I make a career out of just that?
Right. I love that. You mentioned you have a book. What's the name of your book that you have out?
Well, I'm in the process of putting it out now. And I hope to actually have it up maybe by the time this podcast's up. I did a program called the Creative High Growth Program with a mentor of mine. His name's Peleg Top, wonderful, beautiful teacher. And he did this 100-day program. And it's an amazing program for creatives and non-creatives, but we did creative work. We did a lot of journaling. We made art every day. And then at the end of the program, he had us create a book. And, he was giving us all these prompts to journal on and stuff. So the book is a combination of the artwork that I made in and out of that program. There's some of my own art in there. And then there's a series of, I don't even know what you want to call it, sort of like poem manifestos in the book. But the book, and again, I'm hoping to have this up on my website maybe by the time you have this out. I just submitted it for publication, and hopefully it's going to be up. But it's called A Feeling of Belonging. And what I got to in this, what we do when we're creating, whether you're creating artwork, creating a family, creating joy in the world the way you're doing, I think one of the fundamental human needs, a thing that we all deserve, is that feeling that we belong, which is different than and Brene Brown really eloquently puts this. She says the opposite of fitting in, the opposite of belonging isn't being excluded. The opposite of belonging is fitting in, because when you belong, you're your authentic self. You show up as you are. You are truly who you are, without fear, without judgment. And if you're trying to fit in, then you're trying to sort of change yourself in a way, or model yourself in a way that other people will accept. But if you accept yourself, if you truly have a sense of self-love and self-worth, that's what that feeling is. And it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to do. It's not, I don't think it's easy. Yeah, I know people who really just have this, and for me, honestly, it's work. I have to keep kind of coming back to this work, this journaling work. But the book is, as you mentioned, I'm hoping to put out, because a lot of the words and a lot of the images are really about, just because the images that you'll see don't look like the art that you see on my gallery page and the stuff that I've sort of become known for. It's really just what Peleg calls intuitive art. It's collage, it's pastels, it's just stuff that I don't normally use, but it is truly an expression of my path. And I wanted to share that with people, almost as a way of giving them permission. And I hope that, if someone's interested and they go and get the book, that it does give them that inspiration and that permission.
You mentioned something I think that's really key today, and that is that sense of belonging that so many people may not be aware they're looking for, but they know it's missing in their life. Just from your insights, what has created that hunger in people today, that sense of need for belonging?
It's a good question. I mean, I've only ever lived in this time, so I don't know, maybe this is a thing that's always true. I don't know. But I feel like we're at a really interesting time now, especially with technology, we can do so much. And because, because we can work remotely, especially, we can kind of be anywhere, we can kind of do anything. And it's not that everybody has the privilege to do that. Everyone has limitations on their life. But I think just wherever people are, it's, what I've seen is, whether they know it or not, when they feel at home in themselves, and part of that is creating an environment where you are capable of doing that. And this is one of the hardest things, I think, when I do work with people around this, is that they'll discover there's something, it's who asked me this question. This is a great question that another coach gave me, but when they realize that they're complicit in not having the things that they want, you know what I mean? Like, when they're making decisions, when they're creating an environment, when they have relationships that, that aren't serving them because they feel obligated or whatever. I think people are coming more and more to realize that, you can have all the success in the world, but now that everything is so transparent, we really are starting to see the struggles of the people who are, incredibly successful. And this is what I've seen over and over again, is that there are people who are just incredibly successful, famous people who are incredibly unhappy because, they're surrounded by people who aren't, who they don't have that safe space with, who really only want the sort of successful version. They're not comfortable with, the messy stuff that we all have, because you think about like the most famous, most successful person, you look into their life, they have relationships, they've got breakups, they've got kids or parents or whatever. Like, we have these complicated, messy lives. And I think that what we're all looking for is that sense of truly belonging. And what I've seen is that when people do connect with that, it actually becomes much easier to take some of the steps that they knew they wanted to take in their career, with their families or whatever, because they feel like they've created an environment in themselves where there's that self-trust. They know what their purpose is, they know what their values are, and they know how they want to bring that to the world. It can change everything from, a conversation with a loved one to, the conversations with your team. If you're in leadership, I'll give you an example, a specific example. I've done a lot of work on this myself. Whether or not I've achieved nirvana or whatever, it's up for debate. But one of the greatest compliments that I've been given is I run a group program for creatives. It's called the Unleashed Creativity Club. And I ran it once, and then I brought someone who was in the program to help me work with the community and run, and sort of be in the community and help people through the course as we run it. And one of the things that she told me recently was just how grateful she was that she could come to me with any issue, any problem, any feedback, like, this isn't working for me, this aspect, because we're sort of figuring it out as we go. Like, I have her come on as my community manager, and we have a set of what we think the job is. But she came to me recently and said, I'm doing the same thing that I've been doing the past two, courses, but it's not sitting with me. Like, it's just not working. I just don't feel like I'm really fully present, and I want, and she just gave me the truth. And I said, okay, well, what would be a good answer here? Like, what is the goal for you? Like, how do you want to show up for these people? And we just had a really nice, honest conversation. I think that if I wasn't at least somewhat grounded in myself, I might have gotten very defensive and said, well, like, you just need to, just need to double down and get it done. Let's not look at alternative options. We said what it's going to be, and I don't want to look stupid because maybe I didn't get the job description right. But that was one of the most beautiful compliments I could have given, or I could have been given. And I just, think about the people in your life who you like. If you're listening to this, if you want to sort of work on this, think about the people in your life. If there is someone, or if there's someone that you work with where you can really go and say, I have kind of a vulnerable thing to share. I don't think I'm doing a great job. Help me figure this out. And being able to go to someone and say that you don't think you're doing a great job, I mean, that's a beautiful, beautiful relationship that you can have with someone. And if I were to give advice to anyone, I would say, if you have that relationship, or if you can find it, don't let go. Nurture that. Keep that going. You'll find more growth and more happiness in your life with someone who you can go and say, I think I made a mistake and I'm not sure what to do. That's an amazing thing to have in your life.
That is. I want to go back to something you said a little earlier. You said there was a time in your life where you were searching for what to do between the art, and your wife said, just take some time to discover what that is. You've obviously found that sweet spot. So what would you define now as what's your why? What
My
gets you up
why?
in the morning? Yeah. What gets you up in the morning?
That's a great question. I work with people on this, so I feel like, I should have a good answer. Um, for a long time, I've worked with this idea of purpose, which now I think people talk about as like your why. And for a long time, the words that come to mind are, my purpose is to help people unleash their creativity. The way that has happened in my life has been very, very, very different. When I first started working with this concept 20 years ago, it was very much about my work, my creative work, and working with, my community. We threw all these, I lived in San Francisco, we threw these like underground events, and I wanted to throw events that had more creativity. I wanted to just let people create whatever it is that they wanted. We did this one event where literally that was the whole thing. And we had this community of 100, 200 people. And I said, okay, we're going to do this event. And basically, I want people to make whatever it is that they want. And so people were like, "What do you mean?" They came to the meeting. I'm like, "What do you mean, whatever you want?" I said, "Literally, what do you want? What do you want to create? Short of burning the building down, like what do you want to?" And someone almost did actually.
Oh no.
Um, but but I saw in that event how much creativity is a part of all of our lives. Like people were coming in and someone created a fashion show and a photography booth, and someone did create a workshop where they built fire sculptures, and this isn't what they did for a living necessarily, but it was just something they felt compelled to access, to engage with. And some of it worked and some of it didn't, but it was a lot of fun. Now fast forward on that why, to unleash creativity. What does that mean to me now? I see part of what I do, even if I'm working with someone who isn't a creative, who isn't trying to, be a UX designer or work at a branding agency or, whatever it is that my clients do, but to unleash some creative thinking around how they're looking at their problems. Unleash a kind of like, okay, what if mentality. A lot of people, and this as a coach, sometimes people say, okay, I really want this. And then you start to say, okay, well, let's get creative. What if you had that? Let's say magic wand, right? You've got it. You got it. So what? So what does that get you? Like, what are you looking for? Let's go a little bit deeper. Who are you looking to impact? And some people want to change the world, and some people just want to change their lives and the lives of those that they love. And frankly, I think that's the most beautiful place to start. And if you can do that, and if you can do that with deep purpose, that's for like, and if I can help you unleash some creative thinking, because a lot of people, you talk to people who are really stuck. They say, I've got to go do this, but this is hard, or I feel like I've got to go get this next job, but I'm tired. I'm in my 40s and I'm just tired of the next job. I don't know, I don't know what to do. To really unleash creative thinking is really around saying, okay, well, what if that wasn't the only option? And it sounds really, really simple, right? But if you're in a space where there's somebody on the other side saying, let me challenge your thinking, let me push you to go a little bit deeper. What if you did do that? What if you didn't have that at all? Like, let's get creative. What if life looked totally different? And it sounds like hooey, right? That you're like, well, except for that is how my life is. But so many times, and you must know this with the work that you do, so many times when people have the freedom to just say, okay, what if it was this situation that I just don't believe is possible, but like, what if it was? What would you do? And then they realize there's like they have a deeper purpose. There's something that they want to do, and maybe they do it, maybe they do it in their career, or maybe they just do it in their life. It doesn't matter. But when they connect to that deeper purpose, I would say my why is to unleash creativity so that people can find their why and create that impact in the world.
Yeah, I love that. How do you respond to the person? I've heard this said before. I don't have a creative bone in my body.
I hear it a lot. I have I have a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, I used to teach art, and there's a lot of science and research. There's a great book if your listeners are really interested in the science behind this, there's a great book called Peak, Peak, by a guy named Anders Ericsson, and he's kind of the preeminent science. He does all these experiments and research on how we build expertise. So I am definitely in the camp that talent isn't really a thing. You're not born with some sort of like magic ability to do these things, but really anything that you have interest in and are willing to put time into, you can get better at. So you don't have a creative bone in your body. Okay, you haven't been interested in it and you haven't tried, and that's fine. And maybe you're still not interested, and that's also okay. But I'm not talking about, you have to know how to draw the figure or use oil paint to do creative thinking. Like, we are all creative in, you created this podcast. Like, what got you to create this podcast? I'm actually curious what got you to create this podcast.
Oh, sure. Well, I've written a book, a Bible study on healing race in America. And I did it in 2016, and I wanted to kind of keep the conversation going. And I realized there wasn't really a platform for people to have open, honest conversations. And I wanted to kind of create a space where people could come on and talk about whether issues are racial injustice or racial discrimination or critical race theory or DEI, or just meet entrepreneurs who can share their story. Because I think entrepreneurs are neat because they saw something no one else saw. But I think other people have that same creative ability. And I wanted them to say, look, talk to ordinary people who had done it to say, hey, I can do it too. So yeah, it was a bunch of different things in my head to do this, to create this space.
Yeah, and actually it's fun. That's amazing. And thinking about critical race theory, but also just sort of critical analysis, critical thinking, in many ways kind of is attached to that creative thinking. It's questioning how things are. How did we get here? What is this? Do we have to be here? Is there another way? That's creative. That's critical thinking and creative thinking are very much aligned, I think. I don't know. Would that be your experience too?
No, it is definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost the ability or taught, we don't teach that to our kids as much anymore. And I think our kids have lost that ability to critically think and be curious about things and not just accept what they're told.
Yeah, I mean, I have a teenager now, so not that young, but I have two young kids, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge, especially in today's educational environment. There's lots of great education out there, but there's a lot of kind of, sort of cookie cutter rote learning, that kind of stuff. I think whether you're doing I think critical thinking is essential in raising a generation that, to put it this way, like the generation that needs to solve the problems that we've created, like they need to be, they need to do some critical thinking. They can't just,
right.
They can't just solve the problems with, as Einstein said, you can't solve the problem with the same tool you use to create the problem.
Right. I like the idea too of trust but verify.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough with kids too, because right, I mean, I see this on the parenting internet a lot. It's like I want to raise kids who are free thinkers, who don't accept authority just for the authority's sake, but I want them to do it when they leave the house.
That's right.
And it is a challenge when you're getting pushback from the kids to step out of yourself and say, okay, let's have the conversation. A lot of times it's very easy to say, because I said so, or this is just how it is. I don't have time for this. I would say in our house, we try. We're not perfect at this, but I think one of the things we try to do is, when our kids come home and say some outlandish thing that they, discovered on the internet or whatever, to say, okay, let's engage. Why do you think that? Where did you learn that? What do you think that comes from? Do you think that that's true? Is there any other opinion? Like, to really just sort of engage and challenge them to think beyond, because that's the risk, right? Is that they're in school and they're like, okay, I'm just getting a download. And then they go to the internet. God forbid they just get the download, because there is some stuff out there, right? So really, like, engaging with them and showing them that it's a safe space. You're not stupid because you think something is true that you saw on the internet. Let's engage. I'm not going to make you feel dumb about it, but I am going to challenge you to think beyond just the download.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, as you think about where you are in this part of your life right now, this stage, this season of your life, what are you most excited about?
Yeah. Um, like I said, I'm 47, turning 48 this year. And in many ways, honestly, it's a challenging time for folks in this midlife, whether you're like late 30s, early 50s, because, we've lived 20 or 30 years as a mostly conscious, being, like we're aware, we remember most of it. Um, and so we look ahead to the time we have left, right? And it's that idea that like, oh, I actually know what 30 years feels like. So I'm not looking ahead I'm not 20, I'm not looking ahead at kind of infinite time, but I'm looking ahead, and I also realize that I have some experience. I have some skills that I've learned. Maybe it's a wide variety of skills. Maybe I've done one thing the whole time, but the realization that you could actually map out that time is confronting, because it's a lot of pressure. It's like, well, if I don't do that, then and this is where a lot of my clients come to me. And one of the people said to me when we started, said, look, I've got this great life. She's in her 40s. She said, I've got this great life. I own my business, I own my house, my kids are healthy, they're in school, marriage is great, it's all great. I could live every day for the next 30 years like I live today, and things would be fine. We would have money, we would have food on the table, we'd be generally happy. And I feel like maybe I would have missed out on an opportunity to create something more. And this is where the creativity comes in a little bit, because it's not like you don't have to be an artist to have this feeling. I think a lot of us, a lot of us have this feeling. And so the thing that I'm excited about in this season of my life is taking the knowledge, the experience, the training that I've got to work with other people, and actually to use it on myself. How can I have a bigger impact in the world? How can I create more with my clients, more to offer, groups of clients, more to offer with, my writing and my arts, put out there in the world, to have that ripple effect and that impact. Like, I mean, I see it in what you do, in the work that you do, in the podcast that you're doing. When you bring on all these different viewpoints and you bring on all these beautiful conversations, when people are listening to this podcast, there's a ripple effect out there. Maybe they get like one insight, or they have some sort of moment of inspiration, or a little bit of permission to do what it is that they want to do. If we were to fulfill our purpose individually, as coaches, as leaders in the world, if we could create that ripple effect of impact where people have that freedom, that permission, and it's not this stressful thing. It's just that permission to be and to create from wherever they are. I think that's what I'm most excited about, is doing more. Like I've taught people, and I've had people go on and have really, great careers. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, well, let me do that for me too. Because if I really focus on my own growth and the gifts that I want to bring to the world, if I can really do that in a way that feels like a gift, then I'm living my purpose and I'm living my values. And I want to do that in a really deep way now. I've done a lot of different things, but I want to have an impact. I mean, if I'm being really honest, that's the truth.
That's awesome. So when your last coaching call is done and you've signed off on your last client, what do you want your legacy to be?
I think part of it is what I said. When I think about legacy, the first thing I think about is my kids. I want to know that I've given them the emotional intelligence, the tools, the permission to be themselves in the world. I would like them to be successful. I would like them to be happy. I would like those things as well. But I also want them to have the tools to get through the messy stuff. And I want them to do it in a way that pays that forward. So if I were to have a legacy, it's not, it's not some grand scheme. Like I don't need to be Tony Robbins, or I don't need to have like, I mean, I'll take it, but
Right.
like if it's on the table. But what I want is I want to have a legacy. Who said this? I love this quote, and I'm gonna forget who said it. But we our lives don't end when our lives end. Our lives go on for as long as people remember us. And I want, if I were to say that there's a legacy, it's that power of I want the people that I work with to also understand that power of being in service and to do that in their lives. You don't have to, you don't have to do what you do. You don't have to do what I do. Like you can go and live your life. Like this is something that is complicated and hard, I think, for some people when they start working with me they feel that pressure of like, well, do I have to, I want to make art, or I want to run this business. Like, do I have to be Mother Teresa? No. But if you're doing that in a way that is aligned with your values, where you're giving that gift to the world, or to just the people in your life, if I can be remembered by the people whose lives I've touched as someone who gave them that permission to be themselves, to belong, and to live a life of, aligned values, that would be a beautiful legacy for me.
That's awesome. I love that. As you wrap up our conversation, what key takeaways do you want the listeners to take from our discussion today?
Yeah, I gave this one some thought. I mean, there's a lot. I feel like we covered a lot.
We did
Um,
cover a lot, actually.
I, yeah, it feels like this is a much longer conversation. Um, Look, the thing that I want people to remember, and it may sound cliche, but the thing that I think people get so worked up about, especially, when if you're like in midlife and you want to come work with me, or later in life, I've had students who are in their 60s and 70s who are just starting their art journey, or they want to change careers, and you're like, wow, you're in your 60s and 70s, and I've seen just like a beautiful, what's the word, when people relax into themselves and really commit to doing the things that they love in the world. So the thing, to answer your question, it's never too late. That's the thing. If you can remember one thing from this conversation, it's that it really doesn't matter. It's never too late. Maybe, like I said, like I started jujitsu in my 40s. So I'm not ever going to be, probably a world champion. Hopefully I'll get my black belt someday, maybe in my late 50s or something. But I'm enjoying so much about this journey that I'm on with this particular group of people. And shout out to Park Slope Academy. It's a beautiful place. It's not about anymore. It's not about necessarily like, oh, well, if I do this, I've got to go, win awards and do all this stuff. But it's never too late to commit to your happiness. It's never too late to commit to your fulfillment. And it's never too late to do that in small and big ways. If you were to take one thing, I would say that's it.
I love it. Where can people find you and learn more about you?
Probably the best place is my website, markscheffcoaching.com. I'm also, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on all those places.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for this conversation. I think we had a lot of fun just talking about coaching, and I think pouring into people, hoping that they realize that there is something creative inside them. It may not be a Picasso in them, but they still have that ability to find that spot that I believe God created in them to do and to live, and to help them tap into that, hopefully to find that thing that gives them joy and they were created to do.
Very well put. Very well put.